Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron Johnson. I'm the Executive Director of the American Institute of Professional Geologists. I'm going to talk a little bit today about the role geologists will play as society continues to evolve and as we move away from a more carbon-intensive energy base to more alternative sources. The first thing you need to know is that geologists provide solutions. I think that's really what we do. Society determines what's important. If society determines that oil and gas are important, geologists go find oil and gas. If society decides that we want alternative energy sources, then geologists will go and find those things that society needs. We don't dig those things out of the ground. Engineers and mining companies do that. We don't make products. Corporations and manufacturing plants do that. Society makes that decision. This is what we value. Geologists say, we'll help you find what you need to turn that vision of the future into reality. This is a picture of the map that changed the world. If you don't know your geological history, William Smith was a surveyor. He was working on the Somerset Canal in England. And as part of that, he began to map the rock strata through which that canal passed. It became one of the foundational principles of geology, this idea that you could map the rocks that were present at the surface. It's no coincidence that at the same time, James Hutton in Scotland was outlining his ideas on geology. He wrote a text called Theory of the Earth, and he's widely considered the father of modern geological thought, primarily because Hutton began to think of geology sort of systematically and observationally in a way we hadn't thought of things before. Now, it's not a coincidence that these two major leaps forward came at the same time that society was seeing the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. The demands society were making on the earth then went beyond subsistence farming and small scale artisanal mining and began to require larger scale mining activities and larger amounts of natural resources. Geologists came to be in large part because society decided that it needed coal to move forward. When society decided that they wanted to have gas powered lights and move away from whale oil, it was geologists that went and found the methane that was necessary to run these gas lights. That's a photograph of the first gas street lamp in America. It's in Baltimore. It was about 1821. And if you look at the earliest protests against whaling and the use of whale oil, they are in the early 19th century. It's not a coincidence. Society made a decision, what they valued, and geologists said, we'll help you find what you need. When the Bessemer process was perfected and steel became a larger and larger part of modern society and became the base of modern manufacturing, it was geologists that went out and searched for the iron that was necessary. No longer would bog iron deposits or even the Clinton type iron deposits that are found in the Appalachians be sufficient. Steel was being produced now on a massive scale, and much more iron was necessary. So geologists went looking for iron, and they found banded iron formations, deposits in Minnesota and the Hamersley Basin in Australia. And there are large iron formations all over the world. It was geologists that found them, and then the engineers brought them to market, or the engineers and the companies brought them to market. When when modern society decided that they needed to be more mobile, that we needed streets and streetcars and automobiles, we needed pavement and wiring and copper lines, it was geologists that went out and found the materials necessary. We located aggregate to make concrete. We located oil and gas to make asphalt and gasoline. We located copper deposits to make the wiring that was necessary to make 20th century society what it would eventually come to be. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, the environmental revolution occurred after Rachel Carson's publication of Silent Spring, Aldo Leopold's Sand County Almanac. With the stroke of a pen, Richard Nixon signed an entire industry into existence. We had the Wilderness Act and the National Environmental Policy Act and the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act and the Endangered Species Act and the Clean Water Act. And when those things came to be, they required that someone step into the breach and begin the hard work of cleaning up the messes that 150 years of industrialization had made. And it was geologists that were the first ones to step into the breach. We know just a little bit of physics and a little bit of chemistry and some biology, and we understand how Earth works. We know how fluids move through the crust and through the ground. So we were ideally suited to step in when this new industry came into being, when society said, you know what, we want the environment to be cleaner. We want to clean up the messes that we've made in the past. It's geologists that step in to provide that service. In the 90s, when I was a field technician, uh, we decided that maybe we shouldn't be storing as much gasoline under the ground, and we certainly needed to be monitoring those underground hydrocarbons better. And as part of that, there was an entire industry that came into being, an industry of leaking underground storage tank removal, lust sites. It was geologists that were on the ground doing the project management and the hard work to pull those leaking tanks out of the ground and to manage the contaminant plumes that had been emitted as the fluids leaked from those tanks, the hydrocarbons leaked into the groundwater and then began to permeate their way through the water table. Society said, we want to clean up the groundwater, and geologists said, we can help you with that. They provided solutions. Today, we are in the midst of a revolution. We're moving toward more and more renewable energy, and that requires new materials. It requires that we go find rare earth elements and that we find cobalt, nickel, lithium. We make batteries and high-powered magnets. And it's geologists that are doing the exploration to find those deposits. Once those deposits are located, then mining engineers and corporations work together to bring those materials to the market so that they can go to the corporations that are going to make the wind turbines and the batteries and the hybrid electric cars. But it's geologists that are on the ground. We're first into the breach. We're at the foundation of that value chain because society has decided that we value a less carbon intensive energy source, and it's geologists that are locating the materials to make that happen. We've decided as a society that we value AI, and AI is growing by leaps and bounds. This is a stock photo from Wikipedia of an AI center. AI centers require tremendous volumes of water, and it's geologists that are on the ground identifying places where these AI facilities can be constructed, where the groundwater or the water sources are going to be suitable, and sometimes identifying places where these facilities shouldn't be constructed because the demand on local resources will outpace the Earth's ability to supply. At every step of the way, it's geologists that are going to be involved in identifying those materials and finding them so that engineers, corporations, and financiers can work together and use those materials for the benefit of society. One of the things that I like to think about, and I ask this of my students, but I also ask this of non-geologists, we all think about how we can make a difference. Well, as geologists, I think it's fairly straightforward, right? We make a difference because we provide those things that society values. But what that really means is that we have to think about ourselves as part of this larger societal system. Geologists provide one big piece of information, one big piece of the materials that are necessary. But ultimately, it's all of us working together that are going to pull society forward and help shape the society of the future. That means that all of us need to be thinking like Henry David Thoreau. He went to Walden to live deliberately, and he wanted to suck out all the marrow of life. That was what Thoreau said. Well, I would argue that we want to do the same thing as citizens and as scientists. We want to suck out all the marrow of life, but we want to do it in such a way that as we move into the future, those that come after us have those same opportunities. And geologists are going to be critical to that because as society determines what those things are that society values, it will be, as it has been for the last 2 centuries, geologists identifying the materials that are most important, finding them, and then working with engineers and others to bring those materials to society.